Hi, I'm Elizabeth and I love to read. You can also find me on TikTok and Instagram, but this is every book I read in May and what I thought about it. I actually read 9 books in May, which is more than I usually read, so I was pretty surprised by that. But starting off, the first book I read was You Between the Lines. The story follows Lee, who quits her job after she gets accepted into a graduate writing program for poetry. Once she gets there, she discovers that her teen crush, who is now her writing nemesis Will, is also in the program. I gave this book 3 stars. This was one that I didn't really love, mostly because I found Lee to be an unlikable character. She's very insecure, which I understand that, but however, she's very negative towards everything, especially the other members of the cohort in the writing program. She would constantly put down other people in their work, and she's also very petty and couldn't handle criticism very well. She didn't do a very good job of handling feedback from her fellow members on her writing. The romance in this is enemies, kind of rivals to lovers, so I did enjoy that. However, it was also the miscommunication trope, which I found very frustrating, especially because for a majority of the book, neither Lee or Will actually talked about any of their problems together. And I feel like a whole lot of the situation could have been avoided had they just talked to each other. Next, I read Burning Crowns, which is the 3rd book in the Twin Crowns trilogy. The story follows Ren and Rose, who are twin witches and also princesses, as they try to save their kingdom from their long, evil, back from the dead ancestor. I gave this one 4 stars. I really did love this, and I thought this was a great conclusion to the trilogy. It is a young adult story, and it is very young adult, and there's no spice. However, it was super fun and very enjoyable. The only downside I had to this one is that there is the perfect opportunity for an enemies to lovers relationship. However, I was still happy with who both sisters ended up with. The first 2 books in the series are Twin Crowns and Cursed Crowns, and the series as a whole gives like Barbie, Disney princess vibes. Honestly, if you took Barbie's Princess and the Pauper, Disney Channel's Twitches, Disney's Frozen, and Tangled and put them all in a mixer, you would get this series. There are things that happen in this that are even kind of out there for fiction. However, just like a Disney princess movie, I was just along for the ride and enjoyed every single second of it. Next, I have Playing by the Rules. This is the 2nd book in the Players series. The first one is Playing Hard to Get, but this one focuses on Blair and Camden's relationship. This book is like a new adult book, and it is spicy, and honestly, for both of these, the whole plot is pretty much just spice. I do think this one had a stronger storyline than the first one. However, I did not like the characters as much as I did in the first book. Mainly because, again, there was the miscommunication trope, and neither one of them were really honest about how they felt about each other. I get where they were coming from because Camden was hooking up with Blair, who is his best friend's little sister. However, it was very frustrating when really neither one of them, especially Camden, were honest about what they wanted. I did give this one 3 stars. I definitely think this is a book where it's not necessarily my favorite, but I honestly cannot stop reading them. Next, I have The Rule Book. This was also a 2nd book, with the first one being The Cheat Sheet. This one follows Derek and Nora, who dated in college, but then Nora broke Derek's heart. Years later, Derek becomes a famous football star, and he becomes very upset when Nora becomes his new agent. Fast forward to when they're both in Las Vegas for Derek to do a commercial for a company, and then they drunkenly get married. They then decide to stay married just to see what happens. I gave this book 4 stars. Honestly, I love everything that Sarah Adams writes. She's one of my favorite authors. I do think this was a really fun sports romance. My favorite is still the first one, but I do think this is a really great 2nd book. Next, I have Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves. This has become one of my favorite duologies. The story follows Kazi, who is a former thief and is now one of the Queen's elite guards, and Jace, who is the outlaw leader of a kingdom that is not formally recognized. When Kazi goes to Jace's kingdom, Tor's watch to find a traitor for her queen, a cat and mouse game between Jace and Kazi ensues. Honestly, this is such a fun, fast-paced story. Especially Jace and Kazi's relationship, I loved every second of it. The enemies to lovers and cat and mouse game of this was fantastic. I read Heartless Hunter last year, and this reminded me so much of it. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. I gave the 2nd one 4 stars simply because Kazi and Jace were separated for most of it, and I feel like that was the strongest part of the story. However, both of them are amazing, and I highly recommend this duology. Next, I have The Night and the Moth. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I'm not going to go too much into it because I have a whole review of this book already on my page. However, this was a really, really fun gothic fantasy. This story is more character driven, but the characters are so amazing that I didn't even care about that. This was such a great story and I highly recommend. Next I have Rival Darling. This is a young adult romance. I gave this one 4 stars. The story follows Violet, who is dating Jeremy, the captain of the hockey team. After she discovers him cheating on her, she breaks up with him, and then Jeremy essentially plays the victim. He hangs out with other girls to try to make her jealous, and he's constantly telling Violet that she is going to want to come back to him. Violet, who is very frustrated that Jeremy is not moving on, decides to fake date the captain of the rival hockey team, Reed Darling, or at least he has a bad boy reputation. This story is honestly so cute. It is super cheesy and cringe at times, but I didn't care because the relationship was adorable. It reminded me so much of Better Than the Movies. This isn't as good as Better Than the Movies, but Reed Darling reminded me so much of Wes Bennett. He agreed to fake date Violet just so he could spend more time with her because he actually really did like her, and he puts together all these fake dates and reasons to hang out with her, and it's so cute. There is a second book coming out, I think the 1st of June, but I'm super excited to read it too. The last book I read in May was The Wisteria Society for Lady Scoundrels. This one I gave it I think 3 to 4 stars. I'm not really sure where I'm at on it. This was a really fun and unique story, but it's also a lot. A description for this is a prim and proper lady thief must save her aunt from a crazed pirate and his dangerously charming henchman in this fantastical historical romance. Honestly, that is like the bestness to sum it up because there's so much that happens in this. Essentially, pretty much everyone in this story is a pirate, and they also have flying houses. My biggest issue with this book is there are like 10 plus different characters. One of the characters has about 5 different names, and there's so many events that are happening that honestly it's just kind of hard to keep track of. I did enjoy it and thought it was a fun book, but it's not one that I think I would really continue with the series, at least for now. That was every book that I've read in May. If you've read any of these, I would love to know what you thought.